Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. It's been like about a week and a half since I last published a video. I've been busy during that week and a half, obviously with work, but also I had things like the Discovery Witches Series 2 was released here last Friday. So I was like binge watching that like crazy, plus trying to deal with getting over how much I hated Jaws. So I took a few days off. So I only really started reading the book I'm here to review this week, at the beginning of this week. And that book is The Confessions of Frannie Langton by Sara Collins. Now, this was released in 2019. And as far as I know, this is Sarah's only book so far. I don't know if her second book is due to be released like later this year or something. I've not heard anything, so I have no idea. So at the moment, this is her only novel that has been published. And so, yeah, I went into this unsure what to expect, and I was hoping that she would impress me, and she really did. If you don't know what this book is about, The Confessions of Frannie Langton follows Frannie Langton. She is on trial in 1826 for murdering the master of her house and his wife, her mistress, in London. And it was a very unusual crime scene. The husband was found, I can't remember if it was in the study or in the same kind of route. It was very, very close. The two bodies were found. He was found stabbed to death, and in the mistress's bedroom, the mistress was found stabbed in her bed, and lying in the bed next to her, fast asleep, was Frannie with blood on her hands and on her sleeves. But she was fast asleep, and they woke her up, and they were like, "What's going on here?" So she and Frannie denied involvement in what happened. She has no idea what happened whatsoever. And so this book follows her trial, but as it says, it's the confession of. It's actually written from Frannie's perspective, her writings in prison, explaining what happened and telling her story, because in order to understand what happened, you have to go all the way back to her childhood and learn of her life through to 1826. So that's what this book is about. So I went into this really not sure what to expect. My sister read this last year. It only took her a few days, and she absolutely loved it. Now, for me, it's taken 6 days to read, but I will confess that quite appropriate for what this title is. I will confess that as of yesterday morning, when I woke up about 6 o'clock in the morning, I had only gotten through 80 pages, and it's 371 pages. So I had quite a bit of reading to do, and I read all day yesterday, and so far today it's like it's 11:45 a.m. at the moment, and so I was just like, get it done, get it out of the way, and I got through it. Now, work has been extremely stressful this week, so when I've finished work for the day, I very much have felt like I didn't want to be bogged down with something that was very heavy, because I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. So I think that's why I'd only read 80 pages in 5 days. It had nothing to do with the quality of the writing or anything. It was just a case of I'm already feeling tired and stressed and bogged down with work. I didn't want then to spend my evening where I'm relaxing to then feel even further bogged down by the darkness of this book. So thus I woke up yesterday and I was like, right, fresh head. I'm not thinking of work whatsoever. Let's go for it. And I really delved into the story. I will say, though, probably about the first 100 pages is really quite jarring with this story. So as I said, this is Frannie confessing about her life and telling her life story, but saying that not everything is in linear order. Also, you get these moments. There are some chapters that are done in like person, as it were, not being handwritten confessions, what I mean, as the majority of this book is. The rest is her perspective of going through the trial process. So you get to see the trial, but all of her life story stuff is in written form in this book, as she's writing it in prison. And it's very jarring because, as I said, you've got this writing of Frannie where it's not necessarily in linear order. Then you'll have chapters of the courtroom. Then you'll have these single line, like someone will say something which in the courtroom they'll say, oh, the prisoner said this, and then suddenly you'll get that line again, but in italics, because it's actually been said by one of the characters in a chapter that you will not read for another 10 chapters. But it's a link, but it's a trigger, it's a memory trigger for her. So you're constantly jumping back and forth. So it is a bit like, oh, okay, right, get my head around this. And she doesn't hold back to Sara. There is some truly, and I will be blunt, there is some truly fucked up stuff in this book. Stuff I didn't even expect would happen, but it happened. And it's just like, woo, right. Refreshing that I didn't see stuff coming and everything, but holy fuck, I didn't anticipate it would go where it went. So much so that I felt at times quite uncomfortable reading this book, but you're meant to feel uncomfortable. It's important that you do. So you're aware. I will have to say, I really praise Sara for the way that she has written this book. It very much, I sent my sister a message saying, this is giving me Stephen King Misery vibes, of the way that he uses language like razors through a sentence where it's just a very normal sentence about something that's going on, but he uses such jagged and jarring and almost like stabbing words. You feel every word, and Sara does that in her writing as well. And she has these things where she will start a sentence and you're like, oh, okay, this is fine, like I walked across a field, let's just say, but then all of a sudden it will shift to the deepest, darkest thing that you would not anticipate would suddenly appear, and it completely throws you. And I was left like quite taken aback and shocked and trying to figure out where the hell did that come from. And then she starts back up again with the next thing. So as you can see, as I said, the structuring, the language and such, it meant that first like 100 pages was really tough going for me to get into it. But then once I got into it, once I got used to it, I was okay from that point. But I couldn't help praising that 100 odd pages, because as I said, it was like Stephen King's Misery. I still to this day cannot forget that line from Misery where he talks about he's being pulled out of his car after a car crash and being given CPR by this mystery woman who we find out who it is in Misery, of course. And he describes her performing CPR as raping his lungs back to life. Like, I still cannot get that line out of my head. And I was reading this book and going, my God, Sara Collins is going for the Stephen King-esque kind of writing with this. What I will also say, with the deep, dark, sinister, fucked up stuff in this book, yeah, Sara, as I kind of mentioned before, Sara packs a punch. She doesn't hold back, and you will read, I was going to say see, but then I was like, no, because you're reading, but then you do see it because you see the world as you build it in your mind. So see, read, use whichever word, one of those words you prefer. You will read/see some really in your face, shocking stuff. And it's hard going, it's hard hitting. I think some people may be turned off by this book because of that kind of stuff. That is the center of Frannie's upbringing and such. But I don't know. I've been reading reviews on like Goodreads and such, and a lot of people have really given it 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. Couldn't put it down. And yeah, I have to say, throughout yesterday and so far today, that when I finished this book, I was the same. I couldn't put it down. I thought it was great, but there were times when my stomach really turned, and I was like, oh my god, I don't think I can get through this chapter. It very much reminded me, in a way, even though they're very, very different, the sinister things of what went on inside the house kind of thing, very much made me think of The Miniaturist by Jessie Buckley. It's really hard to explain this without revealing stuff that happens, but there's a lot of messed up stuff. It doesn't hold back. You're either going to love it or hate it. The structure, it's very jarring, but my god, the language that Sara uses is astonishing. It really, really, really is. We go through a lot with Frannie, even up to the point where the truth got revealed. I had no frigging clue what happened to this situation with the murders. I had no clue. I couldn't figure it out. And then when it got revealed, it was like, why didn't I see it? Why didn't I see it? And I think I then started remembering back of early chapters of those little sentences, like I said, that were in italics, which will then, you're reading them completely out of context. You have no idea what those mean until you reach the end of the book and you're like, right, I got it. There were some tropes in it that I did feel were a bit obvious that would happen, but I never felt let down by it. And yeah, it kind of felt like The Miniaturist meets 12 Years a Slave. But when I say 12 Years a Slave, just to put in context, I've only seen the film. I've not read the book. I do have the book. It's in my TBR list, TBR bookcase upstairs, but I haven't actually read the book. So when I refer to 12 Years a Slave, I'm talking about the film. So yeah, kind of like The Miniaturist meets 12 Years a Slave. There's a lot going on in this book, and I praise Sara for writing it. I praise, it's Puffin, isn't it? Yeah, Penguin Books for Penguin Random House UK. That's it. I couldn't remember. I remember it was Penguin, but there was something else to the end of the publishing house. I'm like, what's it called? Penguin Publishing Random House UK for publishing it. I really don't know where she's going to go next with her next book. If there is a next book, I don't know if she's got a next book on the horizon or anything. It is very striking, very strong, but I do feel concerns that people are going to go into this and find it very confusing and jarring. But I would say stick with it as much as you can. I did like the story. Even though the characters are very horrible, I got why they were the way they were. But a few of them I was still a bit iffy about. I really think this is one of those books where I really, really need to go back and reread it again to put everything in context, to clear up the still bit of confusion that I have in my mind. Because even though I know now what happened, there were still little instances that people said that confused me. But now I know all the connections, because even as you go through, there are connections that you don't realize are there. Maybe that will make more sense. You know, I'm kind of leaving this book going, wow, that was good. I really liked that. But at the same time, I'm still asking questions. I'm still a little confused. So, yeah. So it doesn't get a full 5-star for me because I've still got that confusion. But I think I need to go back over it to appreciate it. Now, ITV here in the UK have got the rights to make this into a drama. That got announced in August. As far as I know, it still hasn't gotten any further because of COVID and everything. There haven't been any announcements for castings or anything like that. So I would have thought like in the next year or so there might be a drama that is made of it. As to how they will structure it based on what the book structure is like, I think they're either going to have to follow it exactly, or they're going to restructure it to work on TV, which will put stuff more in linear order. And because of that, I think that could possibly, very really teeny tiny possibly, spoil some things which get revealed later on in the book. But that's just me. That's just my mind, the way my mind is going. I am a little concerned how they're going to do certain elements of this book, especially the very shocking kind of stomach turning stuff. Because ITV, even though they're very good at doing, you know, dramas, whether period or crime based, they don't do horrific violence kind of stuff or horrific things done to people. I'm trying not to give anything away here by saying this. Horrific things done to people in the way like is in this book. So either they're going to have to go full out like this book is, which in a way I would prefer, because thinking about the whole what happened, it makes sense. But I think possibly they're going to dull it down. We're going to see, I would have guessed, very little of it. Probably more see a shot of someone's face in shock and we hear it kind of stuff. I really don't know, but we'll just have to see what happens. But there will be a drama of it at some point, because ITV got the rights to it in August. So it got announced in August, should I say. So we'll just have to see what happens, really. Before I finish, I'm just going to do a reading from this to give you an idea of Sara's writing. And this is Frannie. She has come to London. She basically kind of gets passed on from one person to another to be a servant, even though she hasn't got the status of a servant in this house. She's just arrived, and this is her meeting her mistress, Mrs. Benham, who is one of the victims, as I said. So Montford Street ran cobbled and straight like a spine. Houses huddled on either side of it, neat behind their little gold knockers. Linux, the person who kind of sold her, as it were, sent me outside with Prue to wash the steps, and Prue went ahead, clumsy with the bucket, glancing back now and again as if to make sure that I wasn't going to stop or cry out like the night before. I kicked my heels out against my hems, and then, there being no other choice, I went to my knees and dipped my brush. For a time there was only the scratching of brushes against stone, like mice in a cupboard. Sweet, sorry, not sweet. Why do I keep saying sweet? Sweat. Sweat crawled at the backs of my knees and between my shoulder blades. Beside me, Prue's arm moved steady as oars. Soot peeled away in waves under her brush, leaving the stones pale as sand, and I tried to copy her. Her hair broke out of its plaits and swung in brown clouds across my face. It was the kind of work that leaves too much room for thought. My meeting with Benham that morning swirled around my head like linens in copper. Then and there was anger too. That first cold spurt had come from thinking that he wanted the same work out of me as Langdon had. Then it had come from thinking that he wanted what they all want. First my hair down, then my dress. But he wanted worse. You're going to tell me what happened there. Every last thing, exactly what Langdon did. No, my head swirled full of the single word, no. I could hear our brushes loud on the steps. All else was black. Only a sliver of a memory. Silk cotton tree, the warm, squirming bundle, the milky smell. No, I thought, never. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling the bile rise until Prue poked an elbow into me, sharp as a hook, and motioned for me to get on with it. I pushed down harder on my brush, water darkening the flags. My breath rasped like the bristles. In, out, clawing at my chest until, after a time, my head hammered, empty and dark. Then the doors swung apart, pushing us backward, and two women came out. One stout, dressed in a long pink gown that ended in a frill at her ankles. The other taller, slimmer, walking behind her with eyes cast downwards and a black book clutched to her chest. She was a kind of frog-belly pale that is coveted by Creoles for a certain class, that lamp-bright skin that all blisters themselves with the shoe oil to get, and her hair was scraped into a navy turban. A plume of feathers trailed against her cheek, dyed blue to match, and her walking gown was green with an empire line, her mouth wide and red like something in bloom, the neck bones like the handles on a dresser. Pretty like the devil. Anyone who's pretty like the devil is bound to be just as sweet, Phoebe would say. I held my brush up, let the suds drip. She stopped suddenly on the bottom step, swung her eyes back to where we stood, blue as those long-ago pails of indigo. Shockingly bright. Little puckers around the corners made her seem say, "You are?" "She's a new girl, madame," Prue called out from the Indies. She squinted, little creases pulling like threads around her eyes. "I'm Frances," I said, trying to hold my hands over my skirts where soap had scummed snail tracks into the blue. The likes of her expected nothing but curtsies from the likes of me, I thought. So often her chin puffed the hair off my brow. "I see. Frances. How are you finding us?" A shock. It sprang out before I could think better, but she only laughed, like coins jangling, copper chiming copper. "I suppose we are," she said. "Or this place is." She motioned at the door behind me, where I imagined the lion knocker must have been making its awful grimace. "Meg," Pink Frock called out from the pavement, "will you come?" She cocked her head and looked at me up and down, studying me the way Sturgeon used to study a body before cutting a little stretch of worry between his brows. Suddenly she lifted her skirts and clicked her heels and nodded, this kind of bow of a gentleman would make to a lady. How strange she is, I thought. Charles opened the carriage door and helped them inside, leaving us to gape as it pulled away, all quiet again, except for the plink, plink, plink of water from our brushes. There being no help for it, I went back onto my hands and knees, and Prue did the same, swiped at her forehead with the back of her wrist. "And Madame must be feeling herself again," she said. Her voice had brightened. The woman had lit her up. And didn't she take a shine to you?" I made no reply, rubbed my fingers into the crack that was already damp with moss, for all the house was new, green as a stale crust. She pursed her lips. Friendliness makes the day go faster. So as you can see, it's very it's really interesting the way that she writes, but she has they're very short and jagged lines, and they're really harsh, and she has these like punching words, and then she'll randomly have this line, that she's like, right, get out of your head, no, block it out, there's going to be a reference there to a later chapter, and then she's back again, and it feels off, it feels harsh, but then you understanding the rest of the book, I understand why. It's just really quirky and powerful and punchy and sharp, but it works for the context of the novel. And if that would work for other books or the stories she has, like thoughts, I don't know, I really don't. We'll just have to see what she comes up with next, but I can't give it a 5-star because I feel like I need to go back over and read the book again in order to appreciate the structuring and everything what she's done. But wow, was it a powerful debut. So those are my thoughts on The Confessions of Frannie Langton by Sara Collins. So would I read this again? Yes, I feel like I kind of need to, like I said, in order to understand what I read the first time round. But I'm not wanting to read it right away. I think I need some space from it and then go back. Maybe when they do the drama, maybe I watch the drama and then reread the book. I don't know. We'll just have to see how I feel about it. Would I recommend this to anyone? I think I definitely would, but I would say, it's about, tell them about the structuring and such, and just say, be aware that you might not get along necessarily with this, and there is some really harsh, graphic, brutal stuff that happens in the course of this book that you might not get along with. Would I read any more of her books? I think I'd definitely give her next one a go. Just have to see what she comes up with. But for a debut novel, I was impressed. So there we go. That's what I thought of The Confessions of Frannie Langton. Very interesting, very gothic. Like I said, it was like The Miniaturist meets 12 Years a Slave, and once I got into the swing of it, I did enjoy it. So if you read this book, I'd love to know what you think. You can leave me a comment in the comments box below, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to your like you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts on the next book I'm reading, which is Bear Mouth by Liz Hyder. I'm really intrigued to read this. It's a children's novel, and as you can see, the text is fairly big, so I don't think this will take long for me to get through at all. So I'll be back with my thoughts as soon as I finish that. All right, guys, bye.